Well, hey everybody! Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Publishing Insiders with Draft to Digital. We went and picked some of the finest minds in the digital landscape to talk to you about a very important subject, which is how to get the most and the most amazing author conference experience possible. We are big believers in the author conference here at Draft to Digital. We go to numerous conferences worldwide every year. Have since our inception, well, all the way back in 2012. So they have been a foundational part of growing this business. And speaking as an author personally, it's a huge boon for my own author career. So I'm Kevin Thomas, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Draft Digital. And accompanying me, we'll go to you first. Nick, introduce yourself.
Well, I am Nick, just as Kevin said, and I too have gotten a lot out of conferences. Personally, as a fiction thriller author, there are some conferences that I want to attend but haven't because of price. And so my experience with conferences is going to be more on the. I've got some hacks, I guess, is the way I should say it. I've got some hacks to go to conferences without actually paying the big bucks to go to some of these conferences. And I don't know off the top of my head, but there's like Thriller Fest up in New York, which is in New York City. So already it's a little bit prohibitive. And when I was in Hawaii, everything is extra prohibitive as far as travel goes. It's just hard to get there. And so once I could get to a place, then there are some hacks I've got that I want to share about how to get the most out of a conference, maybe without even having to attend the conference officially. As in the entrance fee. Now, all that to say that I don't think that we should not pay entrance fees to conferences. I think these are very valuable. I'm cheap and I didn't have the money in the early days, right? That's all I'm saying.
Kidding. That's fine. There's the budget conscious among us. We can talk about that. Next up, we have Mark the Suit Leslie Lefebvre. The first time I ever met Mark, ever met you, man, you were in a suit. And then every subsequent time I ever met you, you were in a suit. Always at these like author conferences that have high humidity. So I salute you, sir, for your endurance.
I have humidity-free suits. They're very special. I have a wonderful tailor. But Nick, a lot of people talk about being a ghost writer, but you're a ghost attendee of conferences, apparently, as you sneak in and out of these places. I am the director of business development for Draft to Digital. I have been going to conferences for ages, both as a business person from the business side of writing and publishing, but also as a writer. And I've got a list of hacks because one of the things I always worry about when writers go to conferences is this fire hose of information and potentially how to deal with it. But then also dealing with different types of conferences. You've got the in-person conferences. If you are, like me, an introvert and you find some of the small talk conversation difficult, what are some of the things you can do to make it a little bit easier on yourself as well? I think that could be something that will be applicable for our wonderful audience.
Excellent. So, why don't we just go ahead and start there? What are things that well, I guess one question we need to answer up front, though, is like, what is the primary benefit for an author to go to one of these conferences? And should they be focused on going to like the big conferences, the big expensive ones, or can they start local?
Let's start with one of the perks. So one of the reasons you want to go to a conference is to learn. Right? That's one of the key things. You're going to learn from people who are doing the same things you're doing or doing other things, whether they're in your genre or not. Right? There's different kinds of conferences, regional conferences where you're going to find more local. So the thing you have in common is you may be local writers as opposed to all writing thrillers like Thriller Fest in New York. The other thing that I think is important, it's about connecting and it's about community. And it's about networking. Now, networking seems like a dirty marketing buzzword or whatever, but it really is about those relationships that you can have, either with other authors, with potentially editors, cover designers, any of the representatives from the various retailers, editors, agents, any of those things that you're looking for. Right? It's establishing those relationships because it's those relationships that allow you to continue to learn and grow, because you may have questions about your growth and things you want to do. And there are other people who probably have some experience doing the things you're interested in. So in my mind, those are some of the benefits of attending an author conference. Why, as Nick said, some of them are so cost prohibitive or even distance wise, like all of the time and money involved. Why would you invest so much time? Well, those are some of the reasons.
Yeah. If I can add one thing, this was much more personal to me. Everything Mark said is absolutely accurate. And that's pretty much top of the list for the, generally we want to go to a conference. On the more personal side, when I left my full-time day job, I was working for a church, but it was with a group of people. They were my friends. They were my whole network. And when I left that to go write, to literally tie myself to it, no, shouldn't say literally, that means something. To be in a chair all day in the basement, writing in front of a screen with no human interaction, I'll just straight up say I got a lot of anxiety and I had panic attacks. And there was just, you can say what you will about introverts and extroverts and all that. I think there is this aspect of human interaction, real in the flesh human interaction, that at least for me, I was craving and I didn't realize it. And so going to conferences was a cure, in some ways, because it was a way for me to not only just be around other humans, because I have a family, I can go talk to my wife, she's in the flesh, my kids, but they're not in the world of writing with me. They don't, get it in the same way that you two guys do if I'm at a conference. And so going to these places where you two are a great example. I didn't know you in person. I met you on the internet, and so there was all these questions of if you were real and if you were actually, you're who you say you are. No, but at a conference, you get to meet people that you've met and interacted with only online, and it's a much more, I want to say, visceral experience. It's a much broader experience, and that was huge for me. So that was a big one for me, was just being able to stave off some of the anxiety of just being in a bunker writing books all day. That I think was huge.
Yes. I joke and tell people, people will always assume that I'm an extrovert. And I tell people that I'm actually a high functioning introvert. I do kind of get a little bit of a buzz and charge out of being in front of people for a while, but then I burn out and I have to go retreat and slink off to my room or something. But one of the huge benefits for me as an author and these author conferences is how they just like supercharge my like need and drive to sit down and write. I have frequently been at conferences where, because you're talking about your craft, you're talking about something you love, and you're among a whole bunch of people who are excited about it. So what I started doing was, when I get to that sort of introvert lull where I needed to go be quiet somewhere, that's when I sit down and chunk out 5 chapters of a book. I mean, I think a good third of my catalog was written, at least partially written at conferences. So, and I've actually had like career turnarounds where I remember going to the very first, before it was called the Smarter Artist Summit. There was the guys who were running the self-publishing podcast, Johnny, Sean, and Dave. They had this like round table thing, and I was one of the first people to go to that. And there were people there who were relative unknowns at the time, but now are big names in this business, like Damon Courtney and Honore Porter, and a bunch of those folks. And we were all just meeting each other and starting this business for the first time. And we did this like hot seat, and I in my hot seat I started talking about everything I wanted to do, and how I wanted to make a successful business out of writing nonfiction. But then I kept looping back to fiction, and I think it was Sean Platt who said, "It sounds to me like what you really want is to be a fiction writer." And that was a light bulb moment for me. I actually left that conference slightly early so that I could get home and retool everything about my business. So that's a benefit right there, is it can really help you figure out exactly what you want to do as an author. So
I had a moment like, oh, go ahead, Nick.
Good.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, no, I thought you were. I had a moment like that at a conference not too long ago, When Words Collide in Calgary, probably 3.5 years ago, where it was a conversation at a conference that allowed me to see something about my own overall career that helped me make a really good decision, positive decision that led to me getting to join Draft to Digital. So that can happen. But I want to go back to something you said previous, Kevin, that I think is really, really important. Oftentimes, one of the things I recommend people do is, if the schedule is posted ahead of time, you can check out the speakers ahead of time. You can go online, whether you get some sort of email that gives you a calendar. And it's okay. Some of them have apps. For example, like 20 Books to 50K has this really cool app where you can go in and build a schedule, or you can just go and manually take a look at what you want to do. Highlight, because one of the challenges when Words Collide, which is taking place this weekend in virtually this year, has 12 tracks. 12 tracks. It's like Thriller Fest, right? It's like there's so much going on. You want to see 5 of the 12 at the same time. So some of the times you decide which ones you're going to attend in person. Sometimes they indicate, like at Novelist Think or whatever, which ones are going to be recorded. So you go, oh, if that's being recorded, I can go see the other one live that's not being recorded. So that scheduling is really important. Just understanding what you want to see, who you want to maybe interact with based on the attendees, if that's posted. So you're like, oh my God, I know Kevin Tumlinson. I'd love to meet the guy and see, does he wear a suit all the time like me? Or does he wear the bow tie all the time like I always wear my sports coat? So that kind of thing can happen. But going back to what you said, Kevin, that was a bit of an aside, but it kind of is tied in, is when you're scheduling, when you're deciding how you're going to get to this conference, who you want to talk to, what things you want to see, make sure you schedule downtime for yourself, right? Whether that's to recharge, right? Just go get a drink, or just sit back, veg, and enjoy. And often we're very lucky. We've gone to conferences where it's quite beautiful and picturesque. Take some time for yourself to just decompress, to just enjoy being there. Because I hate having traveled to a wonderful city and people's like, oh my God, you were in this city? It's like, did you go see this? I'm like, no, I went from the hotel to from the airport to the hotel. I did the conference and I went back to
what's St. Pete's Beach like? Well, it looks a lot like a hotel lobby is what it looks like.
Exactly.
So comments and questions. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
Sorry about that, Kevin. I know we're on a little bit of a delay. My bad. I was just going to say, so on that note, Mark, I actually have 3 rules that I've made for myself over the years. Very simple, because I'm a very simple person. In order to memorize them, it's yes, no, maybe. And for me, after you've made the schedule and after I've figured out, usually these days it's an app and I can click through and click on people's heads and see who they are and all that. And I'm pretty sure I know which ones I want to go to, which conference or sessions or breakouts or whatever. Yes, no, maybe is my rule when I'm actually walking the floor. And what that is I say yes to any opportunity that just shows up and asks me to do something with them. So that means lunch, dinner, going out for a drink, meeting somebody, having a conversation. I try to say yes to those things as often as I can. Even if I know I need to be somewhere because I really wanted to attend that session, I have found that for me, very often that thing I say yes to leads to some kind of connection with someone that I never would have thought I wanted because I didn't know who they were. I say no to any conference session that I go into and the speaker's not good, or the material doesn't seem well presented, or doesn't seem well thought out or fleshed out. This is not a slight to any presenter. This is hard to do. I'm a presenter and speaker and all that, but I ain't got enough time for that. And there's just other things going on that I can be saying yes to. And so if I go in, and I'm pretty ruthless about it, if I go in, I'll stand against the back wall so that I'm not interrupting anything if I have to leave. But I'm, in some sense, looking for an excuse to leave. If the material is something that I already know really well, or it's something that I just, I thought it was this thing, but it's really not interesting and I don't need that, I don't think, I'm going to duck out and I'll just go sit in the atrium and get a drink and talk to people that are, also doing the same thing. And then maybe the last one is I try to ask myself the question, or try to tell myself, maybe there's something here at this conference that I need to learn, that I have no idea I need to learn. Because when I make that schedule, I'm thinking of things like what I'm doing right now in my writer career. Well, I need to learn, Amazon ads better. So I'm going to go to all the sessions about, I need to learn Facebook ads a little bit better. So I need to, completely forgetting that maybe there's somebody there talking about optioning film rights for my books, who's a professional in Hollywood and knows how to do that. That's not even on my radar. And so maybe I just need to hear from them. So, I don't know if that's helpful to anybody listening, but just come up with these little rules for yourself. I think they're cute and they've helped me along a little bit. Don't be afraid to be ruthless about leaving, a certain breakout session. If there's something better out there somewhere, chances are you're right. So yes, no, maybe.
That's an important. I think that's a very important thing, and it's the same principle. You hear that applied to like books and films and things like that. Like you are not obligated to finish something that isn't benefiting you just because you started it. So if you are, in the case of a book, if you're reading a book and you're in chapter 3 and you're just not getting anything out of it, you're not enjoying it, you are not obligated to finish it just because you started reading it. And the same applies to these workshops and conferences. If you attend someone's talk and it's just not doing it for you, try to be nice about it. But it's okay to leave and go slip into a different one where you might get a little bit more benefit. So let's hop in. We've got some comments and questions. I definitely want to post up. Our own Alyssa says that conventions let you talk back and be heard. Which is a very important point to make, because you're meeting some of these like influencers and big name authors and all kinds of folks that you wouldn't normally get a chance to communicate with. So this is a great time to network and communicate with those people. We have a question from author Maggie May on YouTube, and she says, for an aspiring author, what is the best conference to attend? How many should I be attending per year? Who would like to jump in?
Difficult to answer that.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah,
best is a very. Yeah.
It leads to more questions, Maggie, because I think if you've never gone to a conference, the first thing I would do, because it is an investment of time and energy, and obviously, right now we're talking about being in person and stuff, and some things are opened up and some things aren't. Some are in person, some aren't. It's up to you to look to see what's try local, see what's going on, what sort of conferences, what sort of gatherings are within your realm of the things you're interested in writing about or talking about or learning. Check it out. Go to see previous ones, what they've had there. Sometimes even some of them have content you can go listen to via podcast or something like that. You can check to see some of the highlights from the previous year so you can get a feel for what it's like. But try one local. Don't let that be the indicator for all conferences, because one of the things I've found, having gone to so many of them, is they're all run differently. They're all run right. So some of them are they're really good about this, not so good about that, and it depends on what the this and the that is and what's important to you. For me, I mean, I've been in the book industry since 1992, and there's not a single day that goes by that I don't learn something new about it. But oftentimes when I go to these conferences lately, for the past probably half dozen years, 90% of my time is spent hanging out, as Nick said, in the atrium, in the lobby, and the nearby bar where all the writers are, just hanging out and chatting with people and getting to know people and getting to meet new people and see old friends. That I get a lot of learning out of that, because sometimes things happen and opportunities arise where it's some sort of collaboration that you get invited to because they're aware that that's what you do. Those are amazing opportunities, but I still highlight specific pieces and talks and keynotes or content that I know I'm going to want to participate in. And the same thing for you, Maggie. Usually the first conference you go to, you're probably in every session, right? You're like, I paid this much money, I'm going, and I'm going to go from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m, every single session. I'll take my lunch break, whatever. That's an important thing to start off with. You may modify that over time as you get to know people. Like maybe a friend you saw last year at the conference, you're going to make a point of having lunch with them or sitting together. Or even what I've done, this is another strategy. I've done this. Me and Matt Buckman did this at Novelist Inc. A few years back, where we both wanted to go to the same. Like we sat down and looked at the things we wanted to go to, and there were things we both wanted to go to at the same time. So we divided up and said, "Okay, I'll take really vigorous notes. You go to that one, take vigorous notes." And then we had dinner afterwards, and we just talked about the things that we learned. So that's another strategy, and another reason why I think it's really important if you're able to make conference friends. I know some authors joke about having a conference husband or a conference wife, which is just their buddy that they always do these conferences with. They seem to be like teams. And I remember some friendships, for example, you talked about the Smarter Artist Summit that was held in Austin. There are people I know to this day that are dear friends because they met at that conference. Yes. And so those are the kinds of things that I think you can really establish long-term relationships just from that mutual thing that you got to do together. Whether it was suffer through suffered through a speaker and you felt bad about leaving the room because you didn't want to make them feel bad. So you kind of suffered through in silence. So you shared that. Or whether you both turned to each other during one of those aha moments and went, oh my God, why haven't I tried this? There's some really special things that can happen there.
Maybe I shouldn't have given the advice to walk out on speakers, because I'll start seeing people leave in droves during my talks. So I think something important, one of the things you should do when you're looking for conferences to attend, I do think you should sample and try different conferences and different types of conferences. What I would do is go see if you can get involved in groups online of authors who are similar to you, who have similar goals as you have, so, and write similar things even. But find out what sort of conferences they're attending, because there are different types. So a few years ago, Nick and I and our friend Justin Sloan went to a conference that we're going to say was in a place called Murder, Texas, because that was what when we were driving in, that was the vibe we were starting to get of the place. But we went to a conference, and it was a self-publishing conference. We were invited as speakers, and when we got there, no one attending that conference had the slightest idea what an ebook was. And so all of our advice was geared around, e-publishing, around, the idea of creating a business around selling ebooks and print books. But, they were get your books, pay thousands of dollars to get your books printed and sell them out of the back of your car. That's what that crowd was. So that was not the kind of author conference that was good for us. Like, we weren't going to get anything out of that. The people attending weren't going to get anything out of us as speakers. Hopefully they did. Hopefully they got encouraged to go check out this fancy new ebook technology. But for the most part, we knew they weren't going to. And so that was an example of a conference that we probably should have avoided. On the other hand,
to be fair, we were invited there, and they paid us to go, and everything was kind of taken care of. So it was an easy yes for us. It was not something we would have attended on our own accord, right? It's also the only place in the world I've ever seen somebody pour Kevin a Jack and Coke neat, meaning Jack Daniels Cola with no ice. But so for me, I think, to answer this question real quickly, Maggie, I'm a budget guy, so I'm going to go to the conference that's cheap, that I can afford. There's no reason to splurge and spend $1,500 on a ticket to some crazy convention if it's your first one. Just go to where you can afford, and usually that means go somewhere in your backyard, so you don't have to fly to get there and spend a lot of money on travel and hotels. Here in town, I'm right now currently, knock on wood, hopefully going to be here for a while, in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I know the two of you guys, and I met Mark last year, met up with Mark last year at a conference here in town that turns out to be one of the best conferences. I think it's one of the best around, but it's great because I can go sleep in my own bed at night. And not have to pay a bunch of money for a hotel and arm and a leg to get there and all that stuff. So try to find stuff around. It doesn't have to be big, but there's usually, in most major metropolitan areas, there's going to be something for writers. It may not be specific to your genre, but just get in the door. Just figure out, because it's going to help you figure out what you don't want to do. You may go, and like Kevin and I learned, the hard way. Well, we don't want to go to Murder, Texas anymore. That's not really our people. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But now we know what we know. So it's.
So Nick, since you brought it up, that seems like a good segue into your whole conversation about attending conferences on the cheap. Before we do that, though, I do want to pop Roland Denzel up, because he says he wished I'd given him permission to leave years ago. So I don't look to see him in any of my talks anymore. But
Roland, you'll see the back of his head at most of the things you're speaking.
Right.
I want to say, Roland and everyone else, you have my permission to leave Kevin's talk and go to mine. Okay, whenever,
anytime.
I think both of us, all three of us, might be presenting in Vegas this year in 20 books.
Possibly all at the same time.
You all have my permission to go to my conference talk and not theirs. So there you go.
So Nick, how does one attend conferences on the cheap?
Well, I do. So first of all, I think let's just say this out loud. I think it's probably in your best interest to expect to spend something. to go. And I'm not talking about, it's going to cost gas money to drive over, across town. I mean, go there with, the expectation that you're going to support the people putting this conference on.
Right.
I was in the position where I just literally could not afford the $750 sticker price to go to some of these things. Right. And so it wasn't that I didn't want to. I knew it would be valuable. So just go. If you really can't afford it, there are ways to go and get some of the, and I'm not going to say all of, but some of the benefits from these things. There was one conference here in town that I didn't know about until it was happening. And a friend of a friend invited me and said, hey, this is going on right now. It's too late to, buy admission basically at the door, but coming out to the hotel. It's down the south side of town, and it's a huge, a relatively large convention center and all that. And it's good people. And so I went and just parked in the hotel parking lot, walked into the restaurant right at the front of the hotel. And I just hung out there. I just posted up there. I bought a drink. I wanted to support the bartender, of course, as well as my drinking habit. And I just talked to other writers. I just networked with them. And it started slow. I talked to the guy who had invited me. And then after that, we dismissed out to the lobby. And then it essentially ended up being, like a networking event. Where all the people who had left the conference ended for the evening, and they were all just going to the restaurant as well. And I got to just participate in the part about every conference that's my favorite, which is meeting other people who are doing what I'm doing. I don't need to spend $750 to go to a session and hear somebody talk in order to experience that, right? So to be fair, again, I'm not saying that that's not valuable. There may be information that you want to get, but for me, the most important thing in any of these conferences is meeting you guys, is talking to people in person, and making those connections. And so that's a way to do it. And it's great if there's some that are local, but I've even considered flying out that a couple years ago. Kevin and I talked about going to NINC, Novelists Incorporated. We're both members of that. And I wasn't presenting there, and I actually couldn't attend because we had some familial things there that we had to do instead that we were planning on doing. But I was considering just going to the hotel and just sitting at the lobby bar and hanging out for a few hours, trying to do that a couple days in a row. So there are ways to get something out of the conference beneficial without having to spend, crazy amounts of money. Because a lot of this stuff happens in the bars and restaurants.
It's sort of a joke. Yeah, it's sort of a running joke, but a lot of people do kind of hold to that idea that the real conference is happening at the bar. And so the bar con, which is true but not true. Like the talks and the sort of behind the doors things, like you're not going to get into that if you didn't pay to attend, and you shouldn't even try. So don't take that as advice. But there's nothing that says you can't be in the lobby, in the bar, talking to people and meeting and greeting people, and that's a big part of the experience. So. I know at NINC, every time we go to NINC, I run across numerous people who aren't actually attending the conference. We hang out at the bar. Some of them would come to like our karaoke events, which became kind of famous. It's too bad we can't do that this year. But that is a great place to just sort of introduce yourself, meet people, hear some things, and it's a great networking opportunity.
Yeah, so you get to know people. Then maybe the following year, when you can afford it, you actually attend, so you can support the conference, which Nick said is important. But here's another trick that may help in terms of being able to afford it. So some conferences, if you are presenting, if you are on like a number of panels or presenting X number, they may reduce what they charge you to attend. And that's another great. I mean, the best way is when you're a paid speaker and they fly you out to the conference and they pay for everything. Those are my favorite. Yep. But sometimes you get, so it's let's say a $500 ticket or a $750 ticket, but because you're doing something, because you're volunteering. So volunteering is another way. You go in and you offer, hey, I'll work X many hours and help you guys set up or whatever. So sometimes that volunteering helps reduce what you pay, or sometimes covers your pay to get into the conference. You may still have the hotel fees unless you live locally, or any of the other travel fees, but that's another great thing that you can do if you're on a budget and it's not an affordable option for you.
Yeah, that is a very good point. I meet a lot of volunteers at these conferences, and I get comped. We get comped D2D, or when I do them on my own, a lot of times I get the entire experience sometimes. Short hotel usually, but sometimes even that gets thrown in. So yeah, if you are interested in going, it's really not bad advice to get involved with that conference. For one, that is showing your support. So you are kind of paying it forward in a way. But there are also some benefits to being behind the scenes there. Like you actually uh, get more opportunities. The person who sits in the green room at some of these conferences meets every single speaker that comes through there. So they get an opportunity to chat with people on a personal level that most people have to pay, get in line for, basically, to meet. And some not necessarily pay. It depends on the type of conference you want to. So that's very good advice. Okay, so we have more questions here. So from Michael Sesko on YouTube, what about smaller venues like workshops for writers, like a day-long retreat with an established writer? Mark, you do a lot of stuff with Kevin J. Anderson and some other folks. So this might be a good question for you.
Yeah, so Michael, a great question. Thanks for asking. I think one of the things about the smaller venues or the day-long workshops or whatever. So a single day workshop may even be easier to afford if you have to take time off work, for example, to attend. Maybe local, but usually with the smaller group, you get a lot more intimacy. So Nick had talked about Superstars Writing Seminars, which is held every February in Colorado Springs, and I've been lucky enough that they haven't kicked me out after 10 years of going to that wonderful conference. But Superstars has grown to a larger number. I think it's in the 250 range.
Sounds
But
about
when
right.
it first started, it was really small. It might have been 80, 100 people. And so those smaller groups, those intimate groups, really, really solidify those connections. Those familial, like these are my people, right? These are the people that have my back throughout the year, because they're often interacting through like an online group or Yahoo group or Facebook group or something like that, where you can still reach out to these people throughout the year. So those smaller venues can be really good. And the other great thing about workshops is there's workshops about the business of writing and publishing, which I'm very passionate about helping authors understand. But then there's the craft workshops too, and there's some really great learnings that you can do in those. So those, even if it's just a writing retreat, I know there's some of my friends from the Calgary area who do, participate when Words Collide. They often have like a retreat where they go up at the Banff, and they basically are all in this giant shared accommodation, common bathrooms and stuff like that, common kitchen, where they're just there for 3 days to write. And of course, what happens when you put a bunch of writers together, you get writing done
Drink.
in the evening. Right. You sit around the fire, get your head out of the gutter.
Get writing done for 15 minutes.
You sit around the fire, you have drinks or coffee or whatever, and you really are inspired by these fellow people. So Michael, really strongly encouraged. And again, if you're shy or introverted, the smaller conferences may allow you an opportunity to open up. Now, speaking of which, I do want to offer some advice for introverts. I think one of the challenges we have as introverts is we're not good at small talk, right? That really uncomfortable thing. So the friend of mine basically says, so don't engage in small talk. Ask a really important, significant question of something really deep and meaningful so you can get right into the heart of a conversation. So for me, for example, I am shy. If I walk into a room, I'll just go hang out in the corner and like be this meek, I'm not little, but this meek little guy who just is like, I don't know who I should talk to or whatever. Unless I see a familiar face, then I'll go running over there or try to make eye contact. But if anyone approaches me, and it doesn't matter who they are, if anyone approaches me, I am, friendly as all get out. I will be there to answer questions or whatever. So oftentimes, knowing that other people are probably like you and they're the ones who are afraid to approach like I am, sometimes I remind myself of that. I'm like, well, if anyone approached me, like I'm there to talk to people. So why wouldn't I talk to people? So that gives me the courage and the strength to go and talk to someone else, to say, hey, there's a guy standing in the corner all alone, and I'm going to go approach them and ask them, maybe not a small talk question like, weather comment or whatever sports team or something like that, but maybe it's going to be something meaningful about, hey, did you catch the when Kevin Tumlinson was on stage, and you just see that the scene Roland Denzel made when he walked out. Wasn't that funny? And then you launch into a conversation, and you're good to go.
Michael, I will add too. I have a different expectation from a conference versus a small workshop. And some of these are obvious, but for me, I go to a conference mainly for networking and drinking from the fire hose and just sort of the experiential part. And I go to a workshop or a small seminar or a one-on-one, like you in your example, to specifically get better at something or to do something very specific. And so it's a specificity thing. So if I'm going to go with an author and do a writer's retreat, one, I'm going to have something I'm working on that some problem I need to solve. A very specific, like, hey, I need to figure this out. Whether that's craft or marketing, whatever the workshop is about, that's why I'll choose that avenue. But they are absolutely just as valuable, if not more so, to get that done than a convention or conference. But those bigger events are a different purpose. I don't go with the expectation that I'll get more writing done or more work done. I go with the expectation I'll get less done, because that's not what I'm going to that convention for. So just, I hope that helps. If, you're on the fence, you said you're considering it. It sounds like maybe, you're an introvert. You said it sounds like maybe the reason you're considering it isn't that you think it's going to be valuable, but that you're an introvert. In which case, just as a reminder, everybody, introversion, extroversion, all that means is how you get your energy. Do you get it from being around people, or like me, who's a recovering extrovert? Do you, need a bottle of bourbon and a jar of peanut butter in your hotel room at 64 degrees? That's a requirement for me when I go to these things. That means I can participate in everything, but I need to go back and I need to rejuvenate alone without anyone else around.
That's, by the way, is why Nick and I don't room together anymore. Okay, so this comment leads into another part of the topic I want us to cover. But Cherie says, forget town. I don't think there are any author conferences in my country. And that is always going to be a problem. We've had a few people actually comment that they don't have author conferences in their local area that they can attend. So one of the ways that you can still get the author conference experience, at least to a degree, is virtual conferences, which became huge over 2020 thanks to a boost from the pandemic. They've been around for a long while, but we're seeing a lot more of them. In fact, some of the conferences that we've attended have kind of gone full-time virtual. Even if they're still having in-person stuff, they're still offering the virtual component. I've had various experiences with virtual conferences. What about you guys? Mark, you've done one recently, right?
So AnchorsCon recently. So I had great, interactions with just like open 1 hour session, kind of like this Q&A with authors at AnchorsCon was phenomenal, on top of pre-recording a session. This weekend, whenwordscollide.org is a free virtual conference. That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 12 tracks of programming as well. And they did that virtual last year as well. And one of the challenges is, we always built a fun fort, and I would tell ghost stories in it. And it was an unofficial event where people would drink in the fort, and it was just an evening. So, I just translated that into, Mark's virtual haunted fort event, where here in the office, I'm building a fort, and I've got the little flashlight under my face, and everyone's in the comfort of their own home, and they're in their jammies or whatever, in their own forts that they've built. Because come on, don't we all want to just build forts all the time? But those virtual conferences can really be affordable. And if you're introverted, they're a little bit easier for you to get some information without having to feel like you're pressured, right? So, for example, Nick is like, he needs to have his 64-degree peanut butter and bourbon medley there. I prefer chocolate and peanut butter, or bourbon and bourbon. But you've got that. So if you're attending a virtual conference, you don't even have to escape the room, turn your back to Kevin as he's talking on stage, and walk away. You shut off your camera, you just silently leave the room, and you go decompress, right? You don't have to even leave the space. You can just kind of, do it that way. So that may be a great way for you, if you've never been to a conference, to check out. The one thing I will tell you, though, the thing you don't get with a virtual conference is those serendipitous hallway moments where you bump into someone and you go, oh my God, Nick Thacker, wow. I've been following you on Twitter for 2 years. I've seen the stuff you've done. We've never met in person. My name's Mark. Love to just say thank you for the things you do. So you don't get those weird serendipitous moments of personal connections, or you're both frustrated because you're waiting in line for the restroom and whatever, right? And there's a giant lineup, like you're at a Rush concert, and the women's room's clear, and the men are all just standing there going, like, I can't go to the washroom. There's too many of us.
I was going to say, however, the virtual ones, I can crank up my audio interface so my speakers are blasting the presenter, so I can go pee. And
that's
still
perfect.
Hear
Yeah,
the conference.
Yeah, and you don't miss it at all. Yeah, I did that just before we went live, so I could still hear you guys.
Yes. So I've had numerous experiences with virtual conferences at this point, both as an attendee and a speaker. And I kind of miss that interactive component. But one of the things it does do is allow you to see more of the track. Like you typically they have all those things recorded, and so you can attend. Even if it's not live, you can see like a playback of one. So you miss a lot less of the content. So if you're there all about the content, that's actually a really good way to go. And that's why I like seeing this sort of hybrids popping up. The in-person with an online component means that even if you attended, Nick's workshop on what author email, and you missed Mark's talk about wearing suits to conferences, you can get Mark's talk later. That's something I'm really starting to see come out, and I really appreciate that.
Hey, nobody asked this, but Mark and Kevin, do you guys have any advice on, since you mentioned suits, on etiquette? What's the right word? The dress code, anything like that?
Dress
Have
code?
you experienced any upside downside to just rolling in Hawaiian shirt, flip flop shorts like I do?
Most people are attending dressed like that. Although I've been to a couple of conferences where people are dressed to the nines, man. So it's really just you're gonna have to kind of do a little investigating ahead of time and find out what people consider appropriate.
Bring two outfits, right? And then just be
comfortable. But be comfortable is important. What are you comfortable in? What is you? And so for me, this has always been my thing. The one thing I will say, make sure you shower or bathe. I know it sounds funny. Like, no, I'm not saying this to be funny. I'm just saying, make sure you shower or bathe, because the impression you make when you meet people in person, if you've had a wonderful Italian meal with a garlic bread or some amazing, right, brush your teeth before you get back out into the public, because
my God,
your interaction with someone can be a negative experience for them if there are other factors about your appearance or scent that may be off-putting. And to that end, there are people who are sensitive to scents. Like maybe it's the, bathing in Brute 43 or whatever it is that you did just before you went.
Body spray everywhere.
17-year-old hitting the town, right? Like, so those are some of the things to be conscious of, but be comfortable. Because if you're dressed in a certain way and you're not comfortable, you're not going to enjoy the experience. Absolutely. And it's gonna kind of ruin it for you. So again, even in stupid degree heat, I'll put on a sports coat, maybe with a t-shirt and shorts.
I know Kevin is anti-pants, and he's most comfortable with no pants on. So there are limits to how comfortable you are allowed to be. Yeah.
Respect
that was the best part about wearing masks, though, right? Because I could eat whatever I wanted to and not brush my teeth, and nobody would ever know.
Yeah, see, that's a huge benefit. That's probably like, hey, if I just had garlic, I'll just put the mask back on. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, we're close to wrapping up. So a couple of housekeeping type things that I want to throw out there, and one of them is conference related. We are going to be attending conferences throughout the remainder of 2021. We think. I mean, everything's kind of up in the air, so you just never know. But the ones that are currently still making right now. So we will be starting on 9/3, so September 3rd. We have WriterCon, which is happening in Oklahoma City. That's our home turf for Draft Digital. So if you're going to be there, make sure you check us out. We are also going to attend the Career Authors Summit on the 18th of September. So I'll be there, as well as my wife, Kara, who is our merchandising manager here at Draft Digital. So if you're interested in promotions, you might want to say hi to her. So make sure you check that out. Then we'll be September 22nd. We'll be at NINC in St. Pete Beach, Florida, which is a huge conference. One of the biggest we attend. If you are a member of the Novelist Inc., that's you're familiar with that. If you haven't heard of that, a lot of very successful authors go to this conference, and a lot of industry moves and shakers. It was at this conference that I first started meeting people from Amazon, Apple, for a brief moment, Barnes and Noble, some schmuck from Kobo, things like that. So that's a great conference to attend and a great organization to be a part of. And then I know there's others, but we're actually wrapping up in Vegas, 20 Books Vegas, and that is November 8th. So if you're going to be in the general Vegas area, which apparently is anywhere from California to the outer edge of New Mexico, then you can swing by that conference too. That's become a huge conference. We're attending. Practically everyone you know in this business is attending. So check that out. That's a great place to meet like-minded authors for sure. That to me is probably the self-publishing conference, at least self-publishing in the way we deal with it. So, did I miss any? Do you guys know of any that I should have brought up?
Virtual When Words Collide. I'll be attending there, showing some D2D love. And then in the new year, Superstars Writing Seminars is in February. I know Nick and I will be there. So
Yep.
Nick's just around the corner. I have to hop on a plane. So.
Good luck with that.
You know, Kara and I are still in the van. We're driving the van to all these conferences. You would think that would actually make it easier to attend them, but you know, it's not. At one point, like we have to get strategic about it, because at one point last year, before they got canceled, we realized, oh man, we've got a conference in Florida, and then like a week later, there's a conference in Portland, Oregon. So we were going to hot foot it across the country in one big burst. So it pays to plan. So, okay, so that's going to wrap us up. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you drop by draftdigital.com, get started on your self-publishing career, and we're happy to help you out with that. We got a lot of resources there. In fact, if you hop over to youtube.com, go to youtube.com/draftdigital, where you can subscribe to us and hit the little bell and all the things that YouTubers tell you to do. That is a great place to find walkthroughs of how the service works. You find content like this, where we pre-recorded live streams, so you can catch up on all that stuff. Great advice, and interview a lot of the movers and shakers of the self-publishing industry. So go and subscribe to us there, and you can follow us and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/draftdigital. We're actually starting to kind of expand our presence on all the social media platforms, so I'll probably be changing that little spiel soon. If you're interested, and I did see some folks who mentioned this, but the D2D print, we are still in beta, but we have made some dramatic improvements on the back end of this thing. So we are, every day, we edge just that much closer to being able to take it out of beta and go live with it. But even if you are just in the beta, you get the full-on D2D print experience. You get all the benefits of it. I've been using it now for a couple of years for all my print. All my print books are in D2D print at this point. So you can join the beta, and we're adding new people all the time as we are testing the changes we're making, new features we're adding. So go to draftdigital.com/print beta, and that will give you a little form where you can sign up and join in. And we've been adding quite a few people per day, so go check that out. Other than that, make sure you're tuning in to selfpublishinginsiders.com, where you can find episodes like this. We have an ongoing podcast out there. All these live streams get recorded and rebroadcast as that podcast, so that you can listen to it anytime you want. And of course, you can find it on YouTube and watch and see all the interesting things that are happening in the backgrounds of our homes, and in my case, our van, while we are talking to you. So that's going to wrap us up. Do you guys want to throw in any last words before I end this?
If you are at one of the conferences we are attending, come say hi, introverted or not. We're going to be nice. We don't bite. Come shake our hand. We'd love to meet you and see you and buy you a drink or whatever the case is. That's how it all begins, guys. So come say hi.
100%.
Actually, you're the reason we attend, so make sure you are saying hi. You're the reason we're there. Specifically you, person watching this video, and you. Every one of you, that's the whole reason we go. So make sure you're checking that out. Mark? Nothing? Okay. All right.
I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing. We're here for you.
Mark is nodding along. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Self-Publishing Insiders with Draft to Digital, and we will be doing another one of these very soon. So we'll see you or shout out to you then. So take care and farewell.